Now that I think about it, this countdown would have been perfect for the final video of the year. Oops.
I see it, and now it's all within my reach. It's possibility. I see it now. It's always been inside of me. And now I feel so free. And it's possibility. And it's possibility. And it's possibility. And it's possibility. And it's possibility.
Even though gameplay has always been the most important part of a game for me, as I've grown, the story has risen to almost the same level in my eyes. Granted, I'm more likely to enjoy a game with good gameplay and a bad story rather than vice versa, but the point still stands. And I like to think it's a sign of a good story when it knows how to keep itself together while it's still going, as well as to properly conclude itself. Who doesn't love a good ending? There's a lot of things that could make an ending good, but instead of listing all of them, you need to know that the most important factor is the feeling of satisfaction. I mean, it only makes sense. It's the ending's job to make you feel satisfied at the end of all the hours you've put into this game, to give you something to think it was really worth it. Now granted, that doesn't mean every game that has a bad ending isn't worth it, but these games, they just might be worth more. Of all the possible options to start off this list, Sonic is not really the one that comes to mind. I mean, when's the last time you saw a good story in a Sonic game? Nevertheless, let's talk about Sonic and the Black Knight. Near the end of the game, after defeating the Black Knight, your companion Merlina reveals her true intentions. The Black Knight was actually an illusion created by her grandfather Merlin, and now with the illusory king out of the way, she takes the immortality MacGuffin and becomes the new queen of the realm. And so Sonic makes his way to the Dark Hollow to confront her, where she tells Sonic that her goal is to make the kingdom last forever, as she knew that the feud between the knights would bring it to ruin. Sonic retaliates, saying that there's nothing good about a world that goes on forever, and attempts to defeat her. After defeating Merlina, Sonic tells her that while every world has its end, the time you have must be used to live life to the fullest. This little scene is what really makes this ending for me. It gives a great message of living one's life to the fullest, which is also more emphasized by the credits theme, Live Life, which tells about exactly that. So overall, the ending isn't awfully deep or anything, but I feel it has a great message and it's just really sweet.
Complete with comedy provided by the last time you'll ever hear Jason Griffith in a Sonic game.
Can we all agree that the original Black and White had the best story of any main series Pokémon game? We can? Good, that's good. One of the reasons for this is the character of N. Throughout the game, N has an air of mystery to him. Only thing you really know about him is that he loves Pokémon. And coincidentally, there also happens to be a villainous team working towards the good of the Pokémon. Gee, I wonder if N's anyhow involved with them. So yeah, at one point of the story, it's revealed that N is the king of Team Plasma. But despite that, he doesn't feel like a villain. He's more or less your rival than anything else. And here we come to the game's finale. N has defeated the champion Alder, and he proceeds to take over the Pokémon League by literally bringing his castle there. And so you confront N, capture a legendary Pokémon, or make it faint, and face him off in the final battle for the fate of humans and Pokémon's coexistence. After defeating N, Ghetsis, another important person in Team Plasma, comes in and reveals that he has been building Team Plasma towards his own goal, taking over the world. Ghetsis challenges you, only to be struck down and taken away. And afterwards, N gives you one last speech about how he saw you as his equal, and that he didn't actually understand Pokémon compared to your experiences with them. Again, while this ending isn't exactly super deep, seeing N realize his errors as well as taking down Ghetsis is awfully satisfying. Plus, the scene at the end where N says farewell gives me all the great feelings. And as a bonus, the endgame is packed with awesome music. You can't say no to that credits theme. have an over-the-top action game, like say, one of the Platinum games, one would think that the ending should fit to the nature of the game to live up to it. I mean, one look at Bayonetta's ending should tell the whole story. However, even in the light of its ridiculous final battle, the Wonderful 101 has a surprisingly tame ending. After beating the jerk leader Jergingha in a ridiculous power struggle even for Platinum standards, the Wonderful 100 watches how the Get Jerk army is forced to self-destruct after the defeat of their leader. Yay for destruction! The ending also shows how much Luca has grown as a character. He went from a kid bitter to the team for the death of her mother to the point where he's ready to betray everyone on Earth, to a young man who is ready to work hard to fight for the greater good. Then it's time for Prince Vorkin to say his goodbyes, as he wants to right the wrongs he did as the leader of the space pirates, spiced with shipping and Pink being a huge killjoy. However, the work of Wonderful 100 is not done yet. They still need to scout the planet for any jerks left, as well as rebuild the world from the invasion. And here's where we get to the epilogue, where you play as the new wonderful recruit, Luca, who's now Wonder Goggles. And the epilogue kinda reminds me of something else earlier in the game. Can't just put my finger on it. Add in a credit sequence that you can partly play through, and you've got a true standout ending. It might not be as over the top as the rest of the game, but it honestly doesn't need to be. It does everything it needs to and just leaves you satisfied at the end of it. I've always been a fan of Where Are They Now endings. They're a great way to bring conclusion to the game's characters, as well as show how much they've changed compared to the main game, or even just to sum up their character development. And the true ending of Persona 4 Golden is a great example of this. In addition to restoring the TV world to its original form, and the heartwarming ending from the original P4, the Golden version adds a whole new epilogue where Yu returns to Inaba a year after the events of the game. It's here where we see that everyone in Inaba has become more positive. There are people trying to revitalize the shopping district. Hell, even Namatame, the guy who was set up by the real culprit during the main game, is now running for mayor. Yu arrives at Junes, where we see that Yosuke hanged out way too much with Waluigi, and everyone else now each looking different to how they were. Save for their personalities, as evidenced by Yukiko here. Then they head to Dojima's house, talk about the case for a bit, and Nanako is still cute! They also see a weather report with Marie, the new Golden character from the Velvet Room, as the weather girl. And then she confesses her love to you on a public news show. This whole ending plays out a lot like the other great moments in the game. It's covered in great humor and characters, and the ending as a whole feels like a proper closure that was really missing from the original. And frankly, I couldn't be more pleased about that. When your story comes to a close, it's important to conclude the driving points of the plot, the things that the game has been building up to. Infamous 2 is a great example of this. The driving point of the game's story is an all-powerful conduit named the Beast, who's supposedly destroying the world in its wake, and it's the main character Cole McGrath's mission to stop it. However, things aren't as clean-cut as they seem. Cole learns that the Beast is John White, an ally of his from the first game who's apparently not committing mass murder, but trying to cure people with the conduit gene from the deadly plague, activating their powers in the process. The only problem is that normal people would be left to die.
Yeah, because normal people suck, am I right?
So Cole has a decision to make. Either help John to cure conduits from the plague and destroy everyone else along the way, or put their fate in the Rayfield inhibitor, which could cure the plague all over the world, but kill every conduit in the process. And if you pick the good ending, you're in for a treat. The good ending shows us Cole making the ultimate sacrifice. He charged the RFI, killing all the conduits in the world. But for that price, everyone suffering from the plague is saved. This ending is something that really shows the selflessness of this character. It's true that Cole's rough around the edges, but in the end, he's a hero. And while it may be bittersweet to see him go, at least you know he made the right choice in the end. Unless you're an asshole and went for the evil ending. Fucking selfish pleb. As seen with Infamous 2, having a tragic or a bittersweet ending can be one of the most effective ways of concluding a story. And while Professor Layton and the Lost Future takes a little different approach than Infamous 2, the results are just as or even more impacting than that. The ending of Lost Future is focused around the main character, Professor Layton, and his sweetheart from 10 years past, Claire. Throughout the game, we see glimpses of their past, where he and Claire are, well, being together like a couple should. However, this romance ends tragically, as Claire is killed in an explosion during an experiment for a time machine. And then there's the game's finale. As everything is put to rest and the primary antagonists are put away, the game throws one last kicker at you. As it turns out, Celeste, who claimed to be Claire's twin sister, is actually Claire herself, who was sent 10 years into the future during the time machine's explosion. But because of the unstable nature of the departure, her fate is to go back in time and repeat the same cycle over and over again, which, any way you slice it, must suck. What follows is a heart-wrenching moment where the two say goodbye and Layton refuses to let go of her again. But unfortunately, her time eventually runs out. While this ending is very tear-jerking and sad, it only adds to the power of this ending. There's also bringing the main conflict to its conclusion, and even another goodbye scene with Luke and Layton at the very end. And all of it combined to the emotion packed into Claire's goodbye, and you've got truly an unforgettable ending for the original trilogy. There are some games out there that have, for a lack of a better term, fucked my mind. But there are very few games that have been as much of a mindfuck for me as Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. Trust me, the suspension of disbelief is very strong with this one, but somehow the ending manages to make sense? So the basic premise of the game is that you play as a ghost with the powers of the dead, trying to uncover the truth about his death. And fast forward to the end of the game, you're stuck in a submarine with another ghost possessing a bunch of parts. Absolutely brilliant. This is Yomiel, a man who was killed 10 years ago by a mysterious meteorite named Temsik, which granted him the same powers that the main character Sissel possesses. During the 10 years of wandering the Earth, Yomiel became hell-bent on the idea of revenge on Detective Jout and Lin, the ones who supposedly stole his life. However, after things happen and Yomiel is left for dead, Sissel decides to use his powers to save Yomiel's life, as in traveling back in time 10 years, 4 minutes before his death. After going through essentially the game's final boss, you manage to save Yomiel's life. And then it's revealed that you were a dead kitty all along. Told you this game was a mindfuck. The reason why this ending works is just how well it all concludes for everyone. Jout gets to be with his family again, Yomiel reunites with his fiancée, and we even get to hear the backstory of the mysterious lamp Ray. Seeing all the characters be happy again is really sweet and really makes everything in the game feel worthwhile. Diabetes has never felt this good. You know why this ending is good? Because at first, there were 2 moons, but at the end, there's only 1!
So clearly that means our world and the world of Dark Chronicle are the same because we both have 1 moon, right?
Anyway, there's not really a lot I can say about the ending of Dark Chronicle. The conclusion itself is just pretty simple, but sweet nonetheless. So the main villain, Emperor Griffin, who was actually this bunny named Cyrus, turns out to be a tragic villain. He was robbed of his love Alexandra by power-hungry humans, and as a result, he began to detest humanity and plot to destroy them. However, after being almost killed by the darkness inside him and having been saved by Max and Monica, Cyrus realizes his role as some kind of guardian, I guess, and gives his life to stop the second moon from destroying the world. And at the end, he returns to Alexandra in the afterlife. Aww. And after Max gets poetic and shakes his hair, because it's apparently something that needed to be done, Max separates from all his friends from the future. Max says his goodbyes to Monica as well as to his mother Elena. He also promises to write a letter of their adventure for her, which he has been doing throughout the entire game during his little monologues. And the game ends with Max finishing his letter and relaxing after his huge adventure. Honestly, this ending doesn't have any powerful messages or emotions. It's nothing exceptionally well written, and it's just good. But for me, everything this ending does is enough. Enough for me to feel satisfied at the end of this 100-hour-long journey through time. As I said in the beginning, the peak of storytelling for me is when the narrative manages to keep itself together until the very end. And I think Tales of the Abyss is one of the best video game examples of this. However, explaining the entirety of Abys's story and trying to summarize why it's one of my favorite video game storylines would probably take quite long, so let's just focus on the game's grand finale. The main reason why I love this ending is how it concludes the development of the main character, Luke. He started out as a complete jerk who complained just about everything and was overall a pretty unpleasant person. But after being used by his master, Van, and learning that he was actually a replica of the original Luke, he starts to make an effort to better himself. And his relationship with one of the other characters, Tyr, is a key component in all of this. Luke's growth in this ending shows in two things: his overcoming of his former master before the final battle, and the conclusion of his relationship with Tyr. Luke grows throughout the game thanks to his friends, particularly Tyr, and it's this growth that gives him strength to finally reject Van. And after the battle with Van, he attempts to sacrifice himself to free Lorelei. However, his friends believe he will return, so they say their goodbyes for now. And a year later at Tataru Valley, a red-headed figure appears in the distance to fulfill a promise. This ending might not be as conclusive as some of the other endings in the series for all the characters, but Luke's development is concluded so flawlessly that it's honestly hard to complain. And when he comes back at the end to finish his promise, it's heartwarming to say the least. Also, some tears from Tyr. That's pretty great too. Now, before we get to number 1, here are some endings that unfortunately didn't make the cut. Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair, Professor Layton and the Miracle Mask, Sly 2 Band of Thieves, Ratchet & Clank A Crack in Time, Heavy Rain, Tales of Graces, Portal 2, and Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. Put 2 and 2 together, and it should come as no surprise that, knowing me, Ace Attorney was going to top this list. And while any of the game's endings could have earned a spot on this list, it wasn't hard picking the number 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the near-perfect ending of Trials and Tribulations. If you're an Ace Attorney fan, and if you're not, what are you doing here? The skipping annotation is right there. You probably know why I chose this ending in particular. But if you ignored my spoiler warning, seriously, this is your last chance, let me elaborate a little. So in a nutshell, the final case of the game is about a murder of a woman named Elise Deoxnim, where twists have been had. Resurfacing the DL6 incident from the first game, bringing back the villain of the first case, and Edgeworth as a defense attorney, holy shit! By the end, it turns out that the victim was actually Misty Faye, the mother of Phoenix's assistant, Maya, who's being accused of killing her. But as the trial progresses, it starts becoming clear that the true culprit was the prosecutor, Godot. However, things aren't as clean-cut, as the murder was only an attempt to stop another murder plot.
Ace Attorney universe, where murder is always the only answer.
But when you finally catch Godot and literally explode him, he confessed to his crime, telling about his past self as Diego Armando, how he hated Phoenix for letting Mia die, and how he made the plan to stop Morgan Fay and Dahlia Hawthorne with Maya's mother. In the end, he even cries and shares one last cup of joe with Phoenix. This ending feels very conclusive. Even Godot's confession aside, there are tons of other little things that just solidify this ending even more. Not to mention, while it might not finish the trilogy absolutely perfectly, the way the game concludes the character's growth is something that makes me love this ending so much.
I'm FinnishDuck and I'm going to get myself some of that hot brown goodness. By which I mean hot chocolate. I can't drink anything bitter like coffee.
In the future we'll decide if there's a hero buried deep inside. I wanna be a hero. Pokémon!
Thanks for watching. Sorry that this countdown took so long. It was supposed to be out already in October, but I underestimated the amount of schoolwork I had, plus general laziness and lack of motivation got in the way. I'm not sure will this be the final video of the year for me. I'm working on one more video which I want out before the end of the year, but we'll see how that turns out. If this does turn out to be my final video of the year, well, I guess I'll just see you guys on the other side.